So I wanted to introduce my work for assessment and also to give a bit of understanding to my audience of what it's about. So you see here, this is my working studio, and my work has always been centred around the topic of repair, searching mainly from the emotional context and working out how we can connect that with textiles, the idea of mending the maker, making with one's hands and actually actively mending oneself, or in the process, a work in progress of doing that while making and actively making something to actually have something tangible to look at, and that can bring a sense of self-worth. That's what a lot of my project's been about, and also a lot of my exhibition related work previously. And for this unit, of course, there was the idea of the exhibition, which I've turned into a book proposal, and that's the exact subject of my book proposal as well, mending the maker. So you see how I make my own handmade sketchbooks here. Many of these are very simplistic, made out of bits of scraps of paper all sewn together, and I find that when I look at things in a long length, I can go from one item to the next, to the next, to the next, and actually can see how the progress of the work can become, and also the developmental stages. I use a lot of products in my course and actually testing. This is hardened now, but that's my bowl for mixing things like Jesmonite. I also use white acrylic paint, all those sort of things that are quite bland. There has been, of course, the polymorph that I've used in my work. Again, that's a piece of hardened polymorph, but you see how you dip it in and remold it, which I've discussed in my work as well. Then, of course, we have parts like patterns, which I've created to make larger pieces. This is my working model here, and I call this a working model because it's certainly not a finished piece. It's been more of a testing piece. This is what I have called throughout my work plus 5 foot 2 3/4. I'd already made 5 foot 2 3/4 and minus 5 foot 2 3/4. That I am 5 foot 2 3/4 was from last year's work, where I discussed about how we discussed that I am owning oneself, and that was a part of repair. Then the minus model was about the things that can make us feel less of who we are, less of a human, and make us have a displacement factor and unsure of who we are, and maybe a loss of identity, and how you can actually implant that in an item such as this by what materials you use over detail and text or explanation. Then this piece here is about the plus factors in my life. This had a lot to do with my parents and friends who've supported me, and although it's been very plain, there's a lot of meaning in it. For instance, it's got a piece here of polymorph, which I've implanted in the knee area to surround the idea of operations that we might have, and the scars that we might have, but they might make us stronger and more able to be a human for a longer time. And also the idea that one is okay with being a little bit disrepaired, because we all need mending at some point in our lives, or we can be okay with the fact that we're not perfect. The idea of kintsugi was also mentioned in my work last year, and I did a lot of research on that, and I'll continue to do that this year. And as you can see, we've got the thread here of the golden thread, if you see this up close, and that is just a hint that in our seams we can still have a golden highlight really in our lives. So that's a little bit of understanding about my practice and where I've come through to be on this final part of the degree. It's certainly not a finishing piece. It's certainly not a finalisation of this is where my work is and that's as far as I want to take it. I see repair as an ongoing journey, but I feel that I've pushed it hard enough within this stage of my degree until I then start producing this book that I will be writing after the book proposal, which I've been discussing in my degree so far, and really that'll be a continuation throughout my practice, not just in my degree time. You can see here samples of fabrics and things that I've used. Presentation for samples as well is very important, to make sure that it's quite simplistic but also it holds the sample well. But a lot of that is discussed in photographic form as well. But again, it's just the whole idea of repair and making sure that that is pushed throughout my work. Emotional repair plus making.